Well, it's about time we got to work.
Energy, energy, energy. The currency of life is today's topic. Now, growing up, I watched a lot of Animal Kingdom and National Geographic with my dad, and he was always very fascinated with predators and the hunt. And I think watching with him made me realize there was a lot to learn from nature. And there is, right? I think humans have long looked to nature for lots of things, especially in terms of engineering and design. You know, where we have things like flight from birds, glue from geckos, and much more. But there is something else, energy. And I think every living thing spends most of its life trying to figure out how to acquire it, spend it, and mostly how to conserve it. And nature reveals its value really clearly. It also shows up in human society, just in different forms, but the logic is the same, really.
A law no different from the conservation of energy. Energy can change form, but it cannot vanish.
And I think it's always a little bit more interesting to watch it play out in the animal kingdom. A lot of these animals' survival really depends on them being efficient decision makers and conserving their energy, which is what I want to speak about, the preserving of this force. Now, in a lot of these videos, I am always on the predator's side, especially when it comes to big cats. And the reason is because a lot of these predators are seen to be like these unstoppable killing machines. And in a way they are, right? They've evolved to be these ruthless hunters. But I think a lot of people don't realize they are actually some of the hungriest animals in the wild. And this is a really humbling truth because they are at the top of the food chain. You know, they're apex predators. But prey animals, they eat almost every single day. They eat every day. But predators can go hungry for days because they have to make a kill. That's why they've evolved to be the way they are. Hunting is hard, and a lot of them are endangered. So I am always rooting for them. So that's a leopard in the video, and I think watching something like that gives you an idea of how intelligent these animals really are. The leopard could have chosen to directly sprint at the prey from the very beginning, but it didn't do that. The same way it could have come up directly behind the tree, but instead it chose to creep up in the tree's shadow, literally hiding in the shadow. Strategy with these animals exists to optimize energy. The same thing applies to jaguars. I love jaguars. They are incredible animals. The jaguars scare me because of how they hunt.
One of the most powerful and yet elusive predators on the planet. The jaguar.
They are not trying to outrun you. They are trying to get as close as they possibly can without you noticing. And then they cover the remaining few meters in a burst of speed. So, you know, they're ambush predators.
When she saw an opportunity, the jaguar would move down the beach to get closer to the capybaras. In this clip, her opportunity to attack.
And the reason they do this is because this method is a lot cheaper than the alternative, which is initiating a long chase. The chase is a lot less likely to succeed than the stalking, even though the stalking is not cheap either. It costs, the crawling, the creeping, the waiting, the pausing, the moving at a ridiculously slow pace, and the pouncing. All of that is costly, but it is not as expensive as a chase. So it's all about energy conservation. The same thing applies to humans. How much can I get for the cheapest price? And that's also why a lot of animals hunt in groups, right? If one lioness doesn't catch the prey here, the one across the field will. So they corner it. That's a lot cheaper than one of them chasing the prey back and forth. That's also the same reason why a lot of animals do not attack humans in the wild. There are, of course, cases. It happens, but it's rare, and they usually avoid us because we're not their usual prey, so they don't understand us. And unusual usually means costly. So they avoid us because they are built to survive, not to be brave. And what does survival mean? The right decision, count on the odds being in your favor. That's how a lot of these predators survive. That's why the jaguar does not chase any and everything in the forest, because it would starve. It would be using up all the energy that it could otherwise use productively. Resting, exploring, mating. And this actually also applies to the prey as well. The predator and the prey are both under pressure. If you watch a lot of these videos, you'll notice that the deer, for example, usually does not bolt until the evidence of danger crosses a certain threshold. So they will look up, graze again, and these are small security checks that it does. But it's most likely going to go back to grazing because it has to feed. It is two acts of balance at play. A false alarm or missed detection, and it is always a balance with these two. And that's the same reason why a herd explodes into a run when it detects a predator, and then 20 minutes later they are back to grazing, because a lot of the prey is afraid only for as long as fear is useful. It seems really stupid when you watch it in these videos, but the more you think about it, the more it makes sense. A lot of prey cannot afford to be in a constant state of stress, so always living on high alert. It is expensive to do that. So the same way the jaguar relies on the odds being in its favor, the deer also does not bolt when the evidence isn't enough. So it's always a balance, and that's why these animals still coexist in nature today. They fail enough times for the other animal to be living. They don't succeed all the time, and they don't fail all the time. It is always a balance. This is also the reason why, in human society, for example, when a person becomes famous, they get a team because their time and energy become more valuable than the cost of hiring. It's all about energy. Another really good example actually is when you go through a really bad breakup, and if you don't recover fast, you lose energy. You're losing weight. You are stagnant, and you are reducing your chances of finding another mate. We really are animals, sophisticated ones, but still animals. And energy is everything.